My name is Chi Wei Kwan, and I'm the head of Human Capital Group for Watson Wyatt, which is a US-based HR consulting company. Very happy to be here this morning, and we have a very distinguished panel in front of us, which I will introduce very briefly in a while. But before that, I'd just like to say a couple of things in terms of attraction and retention. I believe today, attraction and retention of talent in a lot of our companies is probably the number one or number two issues which all our CEOs are facing. So when it cascades down to the human resource function, I believe we all have a huge challenge in terms of how can we do this. Let me just go through a number of statistics to show you what the landscape looks like. I'll come back to introduce the speakers in a short while. If you just take a look at the statistics up there, in the poll of international HR managers just last year, 75% said attraction and retention was their number one priority. 62% was worried about talent shortages. In the same survey, when we asked hiring managers what were their concerns, first point, the average time to fill a vacancy had increased almost 50%, from 37 to 51 days, and you can imagine the loss of productivity, etc. that comes with it. 1/3 of these managers say they hired below average candidates just to fill a position quickly. Now, I believe all of us as a hiring manager would have encountered this many times in a career. When you bring someone in that's not ready for the role, what happens? Probably more critical is when someone is not ready for the role, how do you move this person out of the role after that? It's probably 10 times as hard as attracting someone into the role. 1 in 3 employees had recently been approached by another firm. Now take a look at the statistics. Although there's no Korea statistics up there, but just take a look at India and China. 50% or more of the staff have been contacted by another employer. Now we think this and try and relate this back to the whole South Korea economy today, where we are not just Korea but the rest of Asia Pacific, we are really in good times. The economy has all recovered, jobs are out there, and it's the people who are good that will leave you. Right? So these are very worrying statistics. A couple more statistics to just reinforce how serious this whole retention issue is. If you take a look at these turnover rates, in China, all industry 15%. Hong Kong even higher. In India, I'm sure you've heard a lot about India and China. In India, the whole business process outsourcing industry, the IT sector, the IT-enabled services, they're running at significant double-digit retention rates or turnover rates. Indonesia, Japan, Philippines, I mean, the list goes on. And on top of that, in some of the countries we work in, aging population becomes another variable in there, in countries like Japan and Korea, where the workforce is fast aging and you don't have enough replacement coming out from the universities. In short, a shrinkage of talent. So what are companies doing? Doing what we all do best, we pay them more. And I'm sure you agree that if I pay you 20% to join my company today, you probably leave for company X tomorrow for 25%. So it's a vicious cycle. How much more can you continue to do this? You look at the salary increase data across the region. South Korea, I think it's coming in at just slightly above 7% for 2007. Now again, if you think about the impact to doing business in terms of escalating cost of hiring and cost of salaries, it's significant. So on the back of all this, as we start getting into the discussion about how do you attract and how do you retain, it would be really great to hear from the industry practitioners, and we have a very distinguished panel here with us this morning. And let me, at this point, turn over and do a very brief introduction of the speakers and probably get them to talk a little bit more about their background. First on my left, Mr. Tom Vines, who is Vice President for IBM HR across the region. We have also Chris Dixon from ABN AMRO, Richard Pibworth from Samsung, and last but not least, Mr. KK Kim, President of KK Consulting. Tom, can I just ask you to say a couple of words about your background, especially in this area?
Sure. And good morning, everyone. I am head of human resources for IBM for the Asia Pacific region. It's IBM's fastest growing region, and I'll talk a little bit about the types of things that we're doing. From a background perspective, I've been in HR for 25 years, mainly with IBM, and I've worked in talent management for IBM's seller population, which is about 70,000 across the world in terms of how do we attract sellers. I also have worked in developing talent strategies, both attraction and retention, for our outsourcing employees as well. And I've worked in all of the businesses of IBM. So the financial services business, the public sector business, the industrial, so all of the portfolio of the various industries that IBM support. I'm based in Shanghai, and this is a great opportunity to share with you some of the things that we're doing, not only in the region, but also in IBM Korea. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Chris?
Thank you. Yeah, I'm Chris Dixon. I'm the regional head for talent and leadership development with ABN AMRO Bank, based in Hong Kong. I've been working in this field for about 15 years now, if not a little bit longer, give my age away a bit. And I have been in various industries before ABN AMRO Bank. I've been with UBS. Before that, I've been with GlaxoSmithKline, Pfizer, and utility organizations in the UK. I've been out in the region just under 2 years, and specifically looking at the Asia talent issues that we have out here, because we see Asia Pacific as a critical growth engine for our organization. And that's about it, really.
Thank you, Chris. Richard?
Hello, everybody. My name is Richard Pibworth. I'm a senior manager in the corporate HR team of Samsung Electronics. My principal role is to deal with standardization of HR policies in our overseas subsidiaries. As you may know, Samsung has over 70 subsidiaries globally. Today I'll talk a little bit more about issues within Korea, but it's very nice to meet you. Actually, I've been in the Asia Pacific region for 16 years, in Korea for nearly 7 years, and previously in Japan for 8 years. Thank you. Nice to meet you.
Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. This is KK Kim. I'm the president of KK Consulting as a member of Cornerstone International Group for Executive Search Business in Korea. On behalf of the Korean CEOs Association, a multinational corporation, I'm here for this session as a discussion today. And I used to be the president of General Electric, GE Information Service in Korea, and I represent also General Dynamics. So I have a mostly multinational company top management experience. But since I've started this executive search business almost 19, 20 years for this business, I have handled so many multinational companies, including Korean local travel company and so forth, thousands and projects we've handled. So based on my current market experience, I may have a good question for all of you. Nice meeting you. This is KK Kim. Bye.
Thank you all, panel members. Now, before we get into the actual presentation and discussion, just a couple of things. The way we like to run this session is we have until 9:30. And what I'd like to do is invite each of our 3 key panel members to talk a little bit about their experiences in the organization, what they've been doing to retain or attract talent. And at the end of each short presentation, if you have a burning question, we can address it at that point. And we will open it up for questions. Otherwise, we may want to leave all the Q&A to the end, and we'll make sure there's enough time catered for question and answer. Now, before I invite Tom to come up to the podium to talk about the IBM experience, I guess, you know, in the introductory comments, I talked about compensation, and is that the only thing to attract or to retain people? There's also an often said comment that people join companies but leave their bosses. How true is that? Tom, the first speaker, can I invite you to come and tell us about the IBM experience? Thank you.
Good morning again. And we have a great turnout of people that come to this session so early in the morning. And this is probably the right session to come to if you're looking for a new job, right? Or if you're hoping to be successful in your current job so that you can stay and get highly paid. So hopefully we'll give you some of the secrets and some of the efforts that we're doing. As I said in the introduction, I'm responsible for IBM. So what I like to do is share with you a little bit about IBM's talent and retention approach across the world. We have approximately 350,000 employees, and we try to apply that methodology across all our regions, all our countries. We're in 160 countries. And so we also acknowledge the uniqueness that exists in various countries and regions, but at least you'll get a feel for sort of our approach. Not working? So IBM, we as an HR organization and as an entire organization are partnering with our clients to drive innovation. We believe that innovation in the IT and business consulting area is very important. So with that, in Asia, we have 125,000 employees, and we're in 17 countries, and we break that down into 6 regions. IBM Korea is a region by itself, and it is, we are proud that this year we celebrated our 40th anniversary being in Korea. And we have approximately 2,500 employees here in Korea, which is one of the largest, if not the largest, multinational company represented in Korea. And you can see our financial results that are listed up on the screen. But what I'd like to talk a little bit about is innovation. Innovation is a key focus of IBM. We're a company that focus on constantly relooking at business processes and figuring out equipment and processes to drive that innovation. So with that, we've worked very, very diligently with the Korean business here to drive innovation on a national basis. And in fact, many of you may have seen with IBM and the Korea Economic Daily, the local media here, where we've put many publications out to begin to raise the awareness of innovation and its importance. Now, if we're going to be in the innovation business, the attracting of talent is absolutely crucial for us. And also the retention of talent is absolutely critical. It also, innovation is critical if you want to stay in business. And in 2010, IBM will celebrate its 100-year anniversary as a company. So that gives you a little bit about IBM. Now, what I want to tell you is a top secret. And the secret is IBM Human Resources strategy. Some will say you're giving away all of IBM's secrets. It's not a secret. It's really in terms of how you implement it. And for the IBM company, at one time, we had lots of strategies. We had a strategy for AP, HR, we had a strategy for career, we had a strategy for our software business, we had a strategy for our financial services business, and I can see some smiles occurring because many of you have been down this strategy route. And we also make it simple, and that is one page. So it's one strategy, one page in terms of our approach. And you can see many things exist around talent and attraction. So let me start with sort of sharing the approach here. We start with the IBM strategy. The IBM strategy is that we focus on enterprises that we can drive innovation and that they want innovation. So a few years back, we divested out of the personal computer business because it was more of a commodity business as opposed to high-value business. And so that is our core focus as a company. And we try to, one, drive innovation. We try to make sure that we bring value to our businesses. And importantly, we are a globally integrated company. And I'll share with you what that means from an HR standpoint. But what that means is borderless talent. That talent can be shared across all borders based on the needs of our customers. We also coined a phrase called on-demand infrastructure. And that infrastructure focuses on getting to our clients the services and the people when they need it on time. So that is the IBM strategy. So then what we do is we say, okay, from an HR standpoint, how are we going to support this strategy? And you'll see that there are 5 things at the top. These are things that IBM will differentiate ourselves from the competition. These are things where we put our budget, our HR budget. These are things that get priority when we are thinking about HR projects. So with that, you'll see leadership is very, very important for IBM. We put a lot of monies and energy and focus on building the best leaders in the world. We also want our leaders and our entire population of IBM to be both diverse and also talented. So we want different perspectives of individuals, different experiences and different backgrounds. IBM also focuses on flexibility. What that flexibility means is that we are flexible in terms of where people work and live. So for example, many people don't know this, but approximately around the world, 40% of our employees do not have an IBM office. They either work at home, or they're working with clients, or they're telecommuting. So just imagine the dynamics that you have to work on in terms of building a community. But what we find is that although you may get the 20 or the 20% extra pay, the ability to have that flexibility to work when and where you need to based on the types of things that you are juggling in your personal life is one of the things that IBM sees as a differentiator in terms of becoming an employer of choice. We also, we're a company that values integrity, honesty, and also trust in all of our relationships with our clients as well as with each other. So IBM says we're going to beat the market in differentiating ourselves as an employee in those 5 items. I didn't mention also performance is important in IBM. Now from an HR standpoint, what we then also say is, okay, those differentiators are sort of long-term. Those are the things that we're going to separate. But what does our business need right now? And these are our 3 focus items. We spend a lot of time on anticipating and building the skills of our employees. We also challenge the HR organization to lead the transformation in terms of being a globally integrated company. So we want the HR to also work in a borderless environment. And lastly, we want the Human Resources Department to figure out how do we grow talent? How do we partner with our business in terms of growing talent? So the belief is that if we look at the business strategy, we focus on our focus items and we drive the differentiation from our competition, that we will have an inspiring climate in our employees, and that they will, one, be attracted to us, and two, that they would want to stay with us. So in all of this is very dramatic in that we've moved HR from a transaction organization to more of a business partner organization. And talent and workforce development is key for us as we try to drive growth and innovation in IBM. We also are trying to lead the enterprise in our transformation, as I talked about. So I, as an HR leader for Asia Pacific, we have approximately 700 of that 112,700 of those individuals are HR professionals. So we're not enforcing the traditional HR rules. We're actually encouraging our HR professionals to know the business. What's unique about the financial services sector? What's unique about the distribution sector? What's our competition doing? What should we be doing? So we need to have the HR organization know the business. I'm not going to go through all of these, but I think I'll touch on some of the important ones. We find that our clients want a solution that is integrated. And so we also have our HR professionals move across various HR functions. So our compensation person may work in talent management, also may work in management development. So we're doing a lot of cross-functional training, but also cross-functional collaboration within HR so that we can bring one total solution. We also look for global consistency, but as I said, we also look at modifying and adjusting that based on the uniqueness of a various country or region. So in that, we're changing the role of the HR leader, the HR partner, the compensation leader to move from the left of this chart to more of the right of this chart in terms of, if you can do that, we also believe that you can bring value to the enterprise, and also it's something that will attract and retain our employees. So let me talk a little bit about IBM Korea. As I mentioned, we have 2,500 employees, and these are some of the challenges that exist in the Korea environment from an HR standpoint. You know, many of the migrations from a lifetime of employment to now decreased loyalty in companies. This is what many of the surveys are telling us. There's also a high unemployment youth, but also there's competition in recruiting talent. So that's sort of the environment that we work in Korea. Some of the challenges with that is talent attraction. And so obviously we're doing many of the things around visiting campuses, offering internships, and leveraging the fact that IBM is a global company. Many other people that I talked to yesterday mentioned to me that one of the things that they want to do is to work internationally. So we're also looking at creating international assignments. I'd just like to take a moment to thank an individual that's in the room. And the individual is K.S. Lim, who is our Director of HR here in Korea. K.S., could you stand? And what I want to thank him for is that K.S. has given me 2 of his top HR professionals here in Korea. And they're working with me in Shanghai. And they're supporting all of Asia Pacific businesses from like a financial services sector as well as our global resourcing. These 2 individuals will come back to IBM Korea and will have had the international experience understanding all of the uniqueness from an HR standpoint, not only in Korea, but also in the rest of Asia. They also are educating the rest of my staff in terms of the uniqueness of the Korea market. So for KS to give up his top 2 talent is an important journey in terms of building HR professionals. We also focus on differentiation of compensation. We make sure our top performers get the biggest increases. And one of the things that we're working on here is an integrated talent supply chain, which is very similar to what we're working across the continent. So let me share with you what that is. IBM looks at talent similar to like you look at how you secure and procure various products and services. So what we've said is let's look at this from a resource management standpoint in terms of what is our supply, what is our need, what will be our need a year from now, what will be our need from 2 years from now. And then who are our suppliers? We have many organizations that supply us with talent. Campuses, search firms, contractors, and we look at an approach in terms of how to better manage and select those suppliers. And with that, we then look at once we get these individuals into IBM, we look at what are some of the current learning and skill gaps that we need to develop, as well as we project out in the future. And this provides employees with opportunities. So we believe that we at IBM can provide various opportunities for individuals, not only in IBM Korea, but across all of the IBM company. And this talks a little bit about being a globally integrated company. We have lots of global clients, and they want folks from different perspectives, and they also want to be able to utilize the skills across all of IBM, not necessarily in their particular country or region. So this approach in terms of an integrated talent supply approach enables us to be able to see what talent we have, what our customers want, what are some of the learning investments that we need to do, and then this in turn provides opportunities for our employees. So basically what we're able to do is to find the right person with the right skill at the right time, right place, and at the right cost. So those are all of the factors that we are able to take into consideration when we look at this integrated talent supply approach. I'm going to speed up a little bit. So this is just some of the examples of the types of things that we have. I won't go over them in detail, but I'll run through them real quickly. This is some of the ways in which we try to win the war on talent and share with our employees, as well as potential employees, the uniqueness of IBM. In India, for example, we had a project called Project Cheetah. And this is one of the fastest referral programs in IBM. And if you were able to refer someone, you were put into a lottery, and if you were selected, one lucky individual won a car, one lucky individual won a Plaza TV, a motorbike, and an iPod. And this is an approach to not have you answer when those 50 or 60% of your employees get approached by someone outside of your company. We want our employees to refer other potential candidates. We also have a program at the bottom called Blue Extension in China. And basically what we're doing here is we're looking for some of our retirees outside of China. So these retirees could be in Korea, they could be in the United States, and we're asking them to come to work in China for 1 to 2 years to help to develop the talent because it's so young. This is also a unique opportunity for us to keep connected with our retirees. So that's an example of some of the types of things that we're doing to focus on talent and also driving our brand across all of Asia. Here in Korea, as I mentioned, we have a key focus on new hires in terms of campus recruiting, entry-level training. We also have a huge IBM internship program, and just as importantly, we offer scholarships for persons with disability in terms of being able to compete in the marketplace. So all of these things are what make IBM special, and also what makes IBM special not only from a company standpoint, but also a company to attract and retain talent. You all have seen this before, and this is, the attract, the develop, and the retain, and the grow. And IBM has this approach as well in terms of when we secure talent, we make sure that there's a 12-month engagement for them to get integrated into IBM. We assign a mentor, a buddy, and most recently we've begun to assign, for those that are interested in international assignment, a mentor that is outside of their country if they're interested in that. But there are several checkpoints along that 12-month period, and we also help our employees in terms of learning the skills to collaborate. And in doing that, we think that if they take advantage of our various training programs, they'll be able to grow. I mentioned leadership is very important for us in IBM. There are various steps that you can take from leading teams, and then you can lead organizations, and then you can lead the enterprise. So that's sort of the approach. What do we need to do to identify and get our employees ready for leading teams? And then after you lead the teams, how can we get you ready to improve and increase your performance so you can lead organizations? And then eventually, how could you lead the enterprise? So this is our roadmap for growing leaders in IBM. And throughout the program, throughout this approach, there are various feedback mechanisms to see how individuals are doing, and we also focus on diversity in that approach. So in that, we look at the talent, leadership, supply, and the demand, and we look at various types of things that we can do to attract and develop and then retain. We have such things as identifying future people who may be our future leaders, and we have specific podcasts targeted to those individuals about what's happening in the company, what's going on with our strategy, and those types of things. So I'm going to stop there. Hopefully that's given you a quick overview of some of the uniqueness things that we're doing in IBM. I'm happy to take questions at the appropriate time and also at the end of the session. So thank you.
Tom, thank you very much for sharing with us the IBM experience. Actually, I do have one or two questions for you. And maybe before the question, the one point I like to make is, as I listened to Tom talk about the IBM experience, there was probably only one time he talked about pay. And it's not about paying more, but it's about differentiation. So I think that's something for us to think about. My question, Tom, is obviously, these are all fantastic talent management, talent retention practices. To what extent do you think this has been successful in today's booming economy in Asia and maybe more specifically in Korea?
Okay. One of the things that you can use to measure this are the various HR metrics. And so when you put up the slides earlier about some of the numbers as it relates to attrition, the duration to fill a position, IBM is at least half those measurements. So you mentioned in terms of the time to fill a position, our integrated talent supply approach helps us to reduce that by half. Our attrition is about half the industry. And so those are some of the measurements that I use and consider as measurements for success.
Thank you. Let us move on. And I invite Chris to come and talk to you about the ABN AMRO experience.
Thank you. Chris Dixon, Regional Head of ABN AMRO Talent Leadership Development. What I really want to sort of cover today is probably about the dynamics that we're experiencing in this region as a growing organization and as a growing region. Interestingly, just before I came out to this region, when I joined ABN AMRO, I was asked to set up a global high potentials program for our top 300 high potentials individuals at the director level. I set that up, and we've been running with that quite successfully over the last 4 or 5 years. However, the reason why I've mentioned this is relating to a comment that was made earlier. I actually met one of these high potentials in Hong Kong just recently, just crossing the road, and I sort of said to him, "Oh, haven't seen you around for a while. What's happening?" He said, "No wonder, I've actually left the organization. I'm working for a competitor in Singapore." I thought, "Oh, great, okay." So, what is it that you would describe about this competitor that makes it a better organization for you? And he basically came up with one word, which was leadership. And that's why I felt that this is a significant term that we hear bandied around quite a bit. We build a lot of leadership programs in organization. It's not until you actually recognize that really, really does impact the organization. We're currently going through a merger, acquisition, or takeover, whichever term you want to use. And the High Potentials program, again, has been impacted by this. Our turnover, or we've lost 12% of these 300 globally, and the reason that they're citing for leaving at this time is because of this merger. So I think leadership through this merger is an important issue. Anyway, thank you. The thrust of this presentation is really talking about the growth of ABN AMRO over the next 5 years, Asia's 5-3-5 ambitions. Now this started in 2006, 5-3-5, what does this mean? It means basically that we want to be the top, within the top 5 foreign banks by tripling our revenues within the next 5 years. Actually, we probably now need to change it to the 3-5 strategy, because we are now the top 5th European or foreign bank in the region, but we still need to triple our revenues, and we probably need to work on that over the next 5 years. In terms of how we actually see this in 2 ways. We see it as organic growth, and we see it as strategic initiatives or inorganic growth, acquisitions and takeovers that we wish to exercise. Asia actually currently represents 10% of the operating income of the ABN AMRO as a global organization. We seek to impact that and become upwards of 15% by 2010. Really what we need to do is look at the inorganic and strategic initiatives. One of our strategic initiatives was to acquire Prime Bank in Pakistan, which we have successfully done, and that has added, in terms of full-time employees, around 2,000 additional staff. So in the region now, ABN AMRO, as it stands, is roughly 20,000, 21,000 people. The challenges that we actually face can be broken down into three sort of real areas: the tactical financial challenges, our strategic challenges, and the organizational challenges. It's really the organizational challenges that I will focus on here. ABN AMRO has been in this region for 183 years, and it has had several different organizational structures over those 183 years. ABN AMRO has had quite a few structures over the last 5 years, and I think one of the main things that I was faced with when I came out to this region is looking at one of the latest reorganizations that we were going through. Initially, when I came out to the organization, we had, out to Asia, we had two business units. Effectively, our private clients, new growth markets and retail business, and our wholesale clients business, our investment banking, commercial banking arm. That left us with a number of legacy activity in the HR field. In 2006, January, we reorganized our structure to become one bank. And it was really the role of myself and my team to actually pull this together and to look at how we actually rationalize, make sense of, and put in place effective talent management, leadership development, and performance management. We really sort of look at the linkages, we look at how can we make this simple for our clients. What we don't want to do is to create too much of a science in all that we do. It's very easy to become a complex organization, so what we try to do is very much minimize the complexity. So the real thrust of our activity is focusing on a global people plan. It's looking at where we get the data from in terms of our people's views on the organization, the employee engagement survey, sessions that we've run in each country, our people and organizational capability interviews. Various sources of data inform our plans about what we need to do to ensure that we're an employer of choice and building the right bench strength to achieve our global and regional strategies. We recognize that, as I said earlier, we don't want to increase complexity, so we took three thrusts of our activity, which were around talent management, our leadership development activity, and performance management. But we also recognized that we needed to embed that, or at the background of that is a number of areas in terms of management information systems, our diversity and inclusion programs, the rewards processes, and our resourcing activity. The way that we put it is that we've looked at our regional strategy, and we needed to get granularity. We needed to understand what it is specifically that we're trying to achieve. So we looked to our critical organic, inorganic growth and our divestiture initiatives. In other words, what we have in Asia, we have to make some participation choices. I talk about complexity. We have a number of hobbies that operate in our organization, And particularly in our global markets business, as an example, we have something like 220 separate products. And for each one of those products, we have a whole infrastructure of activity behind that, some more complex than others. So we really needed to look at where we needed to focus so that we don't end up putting too much cost in certain areas that are not returning us the benefits that we need. So these are the participation choices that we needed to make. We needed to be clear about what we want to do, how we want to do it, and how we're going to do it. We also have a cost efficiency ratio which is not the best cost efficiency ratio in the industry. So therefore, what we're doing is focusing on that cost efficiency ratio by looking at these participation choices. The reason why I mention this is we're a growth organization. We're growing in this region specifically, but we need to do it in a way that actually makes sense, and we need to do it in a way that is not building an infrastructure that will become too costly in the longer term. We need to ensure that we've got systematic leadership. We need to make sure that we've got the development curriculum enabling the organic growth of talent in the region. Only a smaller percentage of our growth from a business perspective is inorganic growth. So therefore we recognize that if we're going to grow organically in this region, we need to grow our talent and our leadership organically as well. We need to sustain this growth, and we need to identify and develop talented leaders. What we're seeing is over 3 horizons. So we have current leaders, we have midterm, and we have our next generation of leadership. And we also need to recognize that some of the fundamentals within our organizations, such as many of the organizations that I've worked in before, performance management from a management standpoint is not the most efficiently, most effectively delivered process. It is something that is seen as separated out potentially and not that valued by line managers. So we really need to up the skill sets of our line managers and up the capability in the performance management world within ABN AMRO. As I said, it was a legacy organization, so when I came out here, we had our previous organizational structures. These led to parallel development programs, so we had about 6 or 7, or probably more, leadership development programs that were scattered around the region that all our people were considering or had been on. Places on these programs were limited, and typically we ran those in Amsterdam, and this is the sort of global programs which were allowing for global networking. That was scarce, so what that led to is the creation of regional programs to meet the business needs, and then it led to overlap, lack of clarity, etc. So the questions that we were getting asked were who should attend what and when should they attend these programs. We also need to recognize that we need to manage costs, deliver practical solutions at the country level. Again, this led to further program development in the countries. So I think, as you probably can see, that we had a lack of transparency. It didn't necessarily focus people on relevant programs, and there were no clear development routes for people, and we had no systematic talent management process in place. So we came out in 2006, and we really put in a systematic talent management process, and classically these talent management processes, in terms of numbers, are easier to cascade top down. You've got a smaller number at the top, we can focus there, and then we can move our way down the organization. We needed to transition all our programs from 2006 into a regional development, leadership development curriculum, and we also needed to do that whilst we're actually running our organization. So the way that I've described that is that we need to fix the engines whilst we're still flying the plane. So there's a lot of need for leadership development, a lot of interest in securing the business going forward, but we need to put things in place in the here and now as well. We needed to increase transparency, we needed to put integrated talent management in place and target our leadership development, and we needed clearer positioning of our global, our regional and our country-led leadership programs. Also, what we wanted to do was to reduce our costs, increase participation opportunities and focus on our specific regional talent development needs. What we saw as the benefits is that basically we're taking a more systematic and intelligently targeted approach to developing leaders at all levels. I mean, classically what I'm talking about there is that I've worked in, again, other organizations and in ABN AMRO, and we very much tended to do leadership development on a rank-based basis. So it was, what is your level in the organization? This is the program for you. However, what we've switched this to is very much a role-based development process. So what role do you hold in the organization? What number of people are you leading? What type of business are you leading? Are you leading managers, etc.? This is really going to, I'm sure you've all heard of it, a book by Charan, Drotter and Noel called The Leadership Pipeline, or really looking at sort of how do we do role-based development. We also needed to ensure that staff who manage and lead others spend an appropriate amount of time developing the skills and capability to actually do that. And we also needed to ensure that managers and leaders can be directed appropriately for their stage in their particular career, and the right development for people at the right time. So how do we link it? And this is cascading down the talent management process. So classically, we use what's known as a 9-box grid, or the GE model of looking at people in terms of potential versus performance. In Asia, we have a population of roughly 1,500 VP or director level, mid-manager level individuals, and we needed to filter that. So we filter that in the first instance by line managers making assessments on the 9-box grid. The approximately 250 people are what we call our 7, 8 and 9, which are high to medium performance and high to medium potential. This then takes us to a leadership and career development workshop, which is more about confirmation of their capability based on a number of competencies and skill sets that we're looking for. We also need to recognize their own personal mobility and career aspirations, which will lead us to segment them into talent pools, which would either be regional, country or business-led talent pools. So once an individual has been through this workshop, they come out with a development plan and confirmation of where they sit in the 9-box grid. This then takes them on to either targeted development solutions. What we're finding, and classically I'm sure we all find in organizations, that people grow through their technical capability, don't necessarily equally have the interpersonal capability to take themselves to the next level. So one of our impact and one of our solutions to that is very much looking at their interpersonal capability at an impact and influence level. Equally, as people grow in organizations and take on new roles, they're very much coming in and modifying their departments to meet the needs of the growing business. So therefore we need to equip them with the skills in terms of change management, etc., to do that effectively. So we have a number of activities in place that are really targeted at these individuals. Equally, what we have done is that through this process is that we get a landscape, a picture of who our talent are, what their mobility is, what their development needs are, and any specific skills gaps or strengths in any particular areas. So we're looking at this far more intelligently. We've got a much better picture of our people recognize that, people are, or what we're doing is that we're sort of looking at career development routes. So transition programs are focused more on the early stages of going into a new level within the organization, and then we need to also look at, once people have been in that new level, what do we need to do to grow them in that role. So this is very much a separation from what we've previously done, and it's very much about sort of equipping people to get to that next level, to be equipped to succeed at that next level and then grow. We have a number of nomination processes, and we have this overall regional leadership development curriculum, which effectively is looking at things from the individual contributor level. This again is, for those of you who are familiar with leadership pipeline, the process that they advocate. And basically we have manager of others, manager of managers, and functional leaders. We necessarily recognize that, in organizations that have existed for a number of years, it's very difficult to take people from role or rank, take people from rank-based development into role-based development. So we necessarily have the title levels associated typically with these role levels. We look at the transition and growth and role programs. We also recognize that we have individual contributors who have to influence across the organization, around the organization, etc. So we put in place programs that support them. This then grows up to the first time that they equip themselves in terms of their skill set to take on a line management role. We then grow these line managers so that they can perform their function as line managers effectively. And classically, there's many times from my experience in organizations that I've found that line managers are interviewing for people into their teams, and they've never even gone anywhere near an interview skills program and tend to do 90% of the talk and ask 10% questions. So we recognize that we very much need to build in these basic skills within this organization. Again, we're building leadership too for people managers going at the next level. We're sort of looking at the growth process again as we go through, and we need to create that sustainable performance climate. This is a bit counterintuitive because the creating the sustainable performance climate is basically a top-down program. It's very much about ensuring that our top leadership in the region can translate the strategy in this region to the next level down. Classically, we find in the organization, and classically organizations that I've operated in before, as I've said before, is that we find that people lack clarity in terms of where the organization is going, what the strategy of the organization is, etc., etc. So it's about actually getting people to translate the strategy from their level down to the next level. What does it mean for you at this next level? And then we put in place what is known as mobilizing 535, creating clarity, momentum, and change. That is where we use our leaders at the more senior level to teach our leaders at the next level down, to promote or to role model the translation of strategy to them at that level, and then getting them to translate that strategy at the next level down. So it's a top-down and bottom-up process of growth that we're putting in place. We have a number of learning calendars, as we call them, in country-based. So each country has its specific training and development needs, and we have our talent management programs at various levels. So Managing for Growth is our regional talent program at the first-line manager level, or junior management level, in terms of going then accelerating their growth for the next level up. We also have the High Potentials program, which is this global program. So again, in terms of looking at our talent pools, if we have people that are mobility-wise seeking regional, international movement, then they are more likely to be the individuals promoted to go into the global high potential programs that exist. If people are saying that their aspirations are country or business group based, then we will just focus them on the regional programs. We have a number of global programs, and that's it. Okay? Thank you.
Chris, thank you. I do have two questions, and I won't wait till the end because as ABN is going through this M&A situation, the question is the bank going to do anything in the immediate term, because all your competitors are going to be out looking for your top 300 people?
That's a really good question. We are looking at a number of, and we have put in a number of retention strategies around our talent throughout the organisation. So we are very cognizant of the need to focus on people at that level.
Okay, and you're not going to review any more because it's secret, whatever you're going to do with them. Okay, let us move on because I want to make sure we have enough time for questions at the end. Richard, can you quickly take us through, and Richard, obviously comes from a huge Korean company, Samsung. And we've heard from two multinationals. That's here. I'll send you up there. Good morning, everybody.
Okay, yes, I will speak briefly this morning about talent attraction, talent retention. Most of my slides are more on the attraction side than the retention side, and mostly I'm dealing with issues in Korea right now. However, in my view, retention really starts from the attraction point, so there is an overlap between the two subjects. Firstly. Briefly, everybody has a kind of vision slide at the beginning, so this is ours. In our view, SEC is really at the point where we're celebrating the arrival of the knowledge society. Previously, we were just looking at land, labour and capital as key catalysts of economic growth. Now, when we're thinking about labour, what we're really talking about, at least in our industry, is knowledge. And two particular areas, the knowledge-based society and the information society. The people that we are trying to recruit into our company are also people who are driving that society, not just in their jobs, but also in their personal lives as well. So how have we refined our recruitment strategy? Apologies to IBM, for some reason I think our slides are quite similar in format. Previously, where we were was really recruiting an undifferentiated workforce. And the challenge really was to move from that to creating a large inflow of specialists with leading experience and know-how in the digital field. And particularly we felt that the key to that was identifying talent at an early stage and then developing it and bringing it into alignment with the Samsung Electronics culture. So just to give one or two examples, previously looking at a common workforce, now we're trying to differentiate by specialization. Previously, although we still continue to do this, large-scale recruitment at regular intervals. Now we're looking, in addition to that, at recruiting as required in small lots at different times in the year. So generally, our feeling is that we have two categories of employees in Samsung. The second category, this really is what we call either S-level, business leading individuals, or individuals who are the key human resources of the company. And then below that we have people who have the potential to go to that level, but at this point do not have the experience, although they certainly have the skill and the creativity. And particularly I'd like to talk about that group of people today. Of course, in Samsung Electronics we pursue all the main usual routes of recruiting, and you can see those examples on the left-hand side. So, of course, the search firms, IRO, IRO stands for International Recruiting Officer, and we post Korean nationals in different regions of the world to contact Korean graduates of technical or MBA programs, bring them back into Korea, or Korean Americans as well. But really what I would like to focus on is the right side of the chart. And here we're doing things which are a little bit less traditional. Really looking at, when we're at the new recruitment stage, how can we secure specialists into positions in the company at early stage, particularly in areas which are critical for us in the future, such as software development, design, engineering fields. If you listen to our Vice Chairman, he is always emphasizing the importance of design going forward as a differentiator for our products. And not just at the new recruitment phase, but also at the expert phase as well. And just to draw attention to one or two key areas, really looking at how can we secure our overseas human resources in the future. One issue we have is obviously we're a very big company where still the majority of our employees are Korean nationals. On the other hand, globally, about 85% of our revenue right now is earned overseas. So in the future, we will need to develop a lot of local leaders who are very effective in doing their own jobs, in their own specialization, but are also capable of working very effectively with HQ, understand how Samsung Electronics works, and also speak to Korean language, at least to some extent. Okay, so we really group these different issues into three areas. The first is training of talented resources, so software membership or design membership. And then second, the training of competent resources. I think perhaps competence is the wrong word here. I would use the word expert. So really looking at people who are already very, very strong in their specializations at the university stage and will become experts in their field at a later stage in their career. And finally, training of top-level resources. I already talked about the desire to bring foreigners into the organization at a younger age, and also Frontier Membership, which is a program we have for the real experts in Korean universities, where we track them over a long period of time. Some of those people enter our organization. Some of those people are people that we come back to and ask for advice, or we do consulting projects with at later stage in their career. Okay, so briefly, I'll touch on, excuse me. Okay. So briefly, let me talk a little bit about the first two, maybe just 1, 2, and 4. We have a software membership program in Samsung Electronics. What we do with this program is within Korea, we try to attract people who really have, at the stage in their university life, a passion for software. These are the people who spend all their time thinking about software development, both in study and free time. What we do is we've set up 8 centers within Samsung Electronics in Korea, different locations outside of the company, and there we give them the facilities, PCs, personal expenses, etc., to work on a project which Samsung Electronics is interested in. So this is real-life working experience, but it takes place outside of the company and during particularly the 3rd and 4th year of their university lives. And once they've completed that program, generally we will look to recruit those people into Samsung Electronics and put them into their relevant specialization in the business. What we found with this program is that doing so has really lowered our turnover of software specialists entering the organization, and it's also improved the performance of those people who have gone through the program versus the average in the company. So we found that really retention begins right at the university level, and then through better performance, later on those people tend to move more quickly to senior positions. In the meantime, those people also, even before they enter Samsung Electronics, have picked up a lot of software awards domestically and globally. Design membership is a similar program. We look to put people who are very talented in design in the university, at the university phase. We give them the opportunity to work on internal projects within Samsung Electronics, and again, those projects often end up in various Red Dot or IF or other design awards globally. Again, at the end of that program, we look to recruit to the company as a whole. And although this program has been running for about a 10-year period, recently we also extended it to the international environment. So we now currently have approximately 300 members on that program, and of those about 10% are internationally based right now in 5 centers around Europe and North America and Asia. And finally, one program I already touched on, which is the Global Scholarship Program. In this program, what we try to do is overcome a challenge that we have internationally. The challenge is that it is very, very difficult to recruit very talented people at the university level in developing countries and have a strong hope that they will grow within the organization and dedicate their career to the company. So what we do is we select the highest potential candidates and we bring them to Korea for 2 years, and there we put them into an MBA program. From 2004 onwards, this has been the MBA program at Songgyeonggwan University. Subsequently, those graduates of that program enter the company and they're assigned to a business in HQ for a 2-year period. After which time they are then assigned to an overseas business. But really from the time, even the time that they are taking the MBA program, we are giving them a vision for, in 4 years' time, you will go back to your region and probably in this specialization. And what we found is that people are now becoming much more interested in going back to their home regions because they have a better idea of what job they're going to do when they get there. And also they have a good idea of how the company works. They also have a very strong network at HQ by the time they leave. And this is a program which our senior executives also prioritize, and they take part in the interview process, even going on overseas business trips. Okay. Very briefly, I think much of what we do on talent retention is very similar to what my colleagues have already described. I think one area that I might point out is that we have a system within Samsung Electronics which is an early warning system. So, for example, if a manager is aware that there is a problem which might lead to a resignation within his or her department, we make it in their interests to record that on an internal system, and then we have internal people who can follow up, find out the extent of the problem and hopefully resolve the problem before the employee actually proceeds to interviewing with other companies. Another issue briefly is right now we have about 700 employees within Samsung Electronics HQ in Korea who are foreigners. To help these people adjust, we also have a global help desk which covers all living issues in Korea, and that links back to the HR department which can discuss career issues. Generally our vision for retention is once we have a person who's very talented, who joins the organization, who likes what they're doing, generally that person is very good at saying, well, I know this person in a university program who is also very talented, interested in joining Samsung. Could we talk to this person? So we feel that although the programs I've described to you have been running for 10 years, probably the next 10 years is where we really begin to see the benefit within our organization, and the program becomes self-generating. And finally, just to finish with the vision, our HR vision is to enhance our status as a global leading organization that is consistently able to attract top talent and enable their success. One comment I would make in ending is we do all of these things both domestically and overseas, but right now Samsung Electronics is a little bit of a two-track company because we have a very strong HR position in the Korean market. On the other hand, as I said, 85% of our revenue comes overseas, but most of that increase has taken place in the past 5 years. So now we face the challenge really of how to roll out what we're very good at in Korea, adjust it for different values, different cultures overseas, and make it successful in our other overseas subsidiaries. And my role particularly is to start by standardizing the basic HR policies within our organization, and then making sure they're working in terms of generating talent who want to stay within the company. So I'll finish there, and I'll hand over to Mr. Kwon. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. I will hold my question for you and then give the floor some time. But I just want to say one thing. I think having heard from three very different organizations, the U.S. multinational, European bank, and a huge Korean conglomerate, I think one thing that came across to me was the consistency in having an integrated approach to how you manage your talent. And maybe I'll invite Mr. Kim to say a few words, because what's your reaction to what you've heard from the local Korean perspective? You want to stay there, or then we can have a dialogue?
Yeah, right here?
Yeah.
Yes, I'd like to make a couple of comments and one question on the subject matter based on my practical experience in the current market, since I've been in this business, search business, for almost 20 years. And the economy is, in Asia-Pacific region is very growing so fast. So they need a lot of good talents right now for the transaction of products and services investment within the Asia-Pacific region. Because of the shortage of good talents, as you know, all of you will face the difficulty to retain them more longer term, in spite of the fact that all of you have already implemented such a wonderful system by making a lot of investment for attraction and retention of good talent. But I would like to point out a few things in terms of employee point of view. Normally, employee point of view, when they're concerned about these following factors, about four factors. One is the vision for growth. First one, vision for growth, the employee himself or herself, whether he can have a vision for growth, or the organization where he or she belongs to, the organization will have a vision for growth. The second issue is the rewarding package must be competitive based on their qualification in the market. The third factor is the organizational issue. Organizational issue normally, sometimes they do have own corporate culture, and they do have a specific and reporting line and with whom they are supposed to work and so forth, this kind of organizational issue. Fourth issue is normally in personal issue. A personal issue is normally family and the school and housing and so forth, personal issue. You have to take care of those subjects very successfully in order to have a successful the attraction and retention of good talent. The recent change of the Korean enterprise now they just started to look up. There's such as like emerging market, China, India, and so many emerging markets, and for the globalization for future survival. That's why quite recent days, many travel company or big companies they have started to hire expatriate, and they're trying to localize in overseas, even in Korea. But take as an example, like a workforce of blue collar level, Japan and China and Korea and Taiwan and Hong Kong, Singapore, they are importing quite a lot, million a year in the workforce from Bangladesh, India, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, which is about 40% of their need. Under the, another thing is under the circumstances of super age society, quite recent years, the Japanese, the baby boom generation will retire very soon of very good talent. But Tom is there anyway for us to set up very cooperative system among the Asia-Pacific country for utilizing such a good talents among the Asia-Pacific country. This is what I would like to make a question.
Yes, I do believe, as I mentioned earlier, it's important for talent to become borderless. And I think that the types of things that we do in IBM enables that. I mentioned earlier that we had two individuals in HR in IBM Korea who are currently working in Shanghai. This is an opportunity for us to sort of share the talent, and we also have to address the personal issues that you mentioned about in terms of school for these two individuals, their families, as well as making sure that they are mentored. But these two individuals will come back. They will help us in China at our AP headquarters, but they also will come back and they will be able to be a role model for others, that others will be willing to do that in terms of going on an international assignment. As I mentioned, our clients are very global, and the fact that we have that, and we've been doing international assignments since the early years of our existence, so we actually have models of people from various countries that are doing that. I think we have to sort of increase that, and I think it's both ways. Like we have a global account with Samsung. You know, we have individuals in the U.S. that we believe can help Samsung from a technology standpoint, as well as we have individuals here that are working on the Samsung account. So you have to build a global workforce for your global clients. And as Korea becomes more of a global important entity in the Asia-Pacific region, the types of things that we're doing at IBM, I think other companies will do as well.
I think Samsung Electronics already like a top-branded, worldwide multinational company, almost the same standard. But the other, second and third group of Korean local company, they have to benchmark. They do more benchmark efforts. I think is in order to have a successful attention and the retention of good talent.
Yeah. Okay, thank you, gentlemen. I would like to see if we could stay on for another 5 minutes, but over time, just to give you an opportunity to ask questions. Let me turn this over to the floor. Ladies first.
For the HR team, and we heard a lot about the talent management. I'm curious how you identify top talents within your company. And it's a question for Mr. Dixon and for Mr. Vines.
We have a foundation competency model, and we ask our employees to sort of do a self-assessment of themselves on these competencies, and then they review it with their management team, and the manager validates or doesn't validate and says these are the gaps that you need to do. Those that are at sort of certain competencies, in addition to having the technical skill, we then put into our top talent program, which is about 20% of our population, and that's those are the individuals that we focus on. Some of the development programs, the podcasts, we look at those particular individuals when we look at stock options and so forth. So those are the individuals that we focus on, and that's how we do it. And then, as I said, once you're selected for like our top talent program, you're not there for life. Going back as one of our differentiators, performance, you have to continue to perform, and you could go in and out of that program.
Thanks, Tom.
I would just say that we do the same. The only thing that I would personally add to it is that we need to add in talent for what. So we need to recognize what we're selecting talent for in the future. So it's been very clear about where we see that individual going. Is it an individual specialist that's going to be very much a product line specialist, or is it someone that's looking for more general management leadership capability? And that's then we assess that and we determine the right development routes to enable that.
Next question, gentleman in front.
Hi, my name is Chow Kok Fong from Changi Airports International. I want to I'm going to address this question to Richard Pibworth, and basically it says, I think I can understand how people like IBM and ABN AMRO can make a pitch for talent to be borderless, for anyone who aspires to join the organization to eventually rise to the top echelons of organization. But how does Samsung do this? Because you would presumably come across to any international audience as largely a Korean company where the top leadership will still remain in Korean hands for a long time to come.
I think that's one of the key issues in our organisation right now. I think you put it very, very precisely. Just to go back over the history of Samsung Electronics, I think if you were to look at the period between 2000 to maybe 2006 or so, at that time we have very, very rapidly growing revenue and profitability and very, very high growth brand. And that brand value concentrated in very recognizable products, so particularly hand phones, for example. So that meant, if we're talking about the overseas environment, we have a lot of people who are very interested within the company, and they're very interested in the first place for a very short-term reason, honestly. So they want to be a part of a successful company. They realize that Samsung Electronics will give them an opportunity to grow very rapidly. As you said, the issue is what happens when the organization starts to stabilize and when growth starts to slow. And I guess with other organizations as well, what we see round about the 5-year point in people's service within Samsung Electronics, then the question starts to come back, well, what is the vision for my career? So within Samsung Electronics, this is something that we're working on right now. Basically, within the company, we do review what is the localization level within all of our subsidiaries overseas, which positions can we localize, which positions are not suitable for localization in the mid to long term. And then based on that, well, how can we develop those people within the organization so that they will be ready for their position? When you get to that question, it starts getting tricky because unfortunately we are not headquartered in the US. So if we are talking about HQ assignment, then we have to perhaps persuade people to come for a 2 or 3 year period. And we then get into cultural issues such as, well, this is my position and my job description is very clear in the UK, but if I come to Korea that may not be the case. So where we are right now is at mid-level, mid-manager level, we have a number of people in HQ, and I'm one of those who are going through that process. But I do agree with you, at the senior manager level, this is a challenge that we will have to face in the next 2 or 3 years.
I would probably add a couple of points to that. I think there are 3 ways you can segregate the issue. One is, I believe the multinationals have a different set of challenge. It's not about attraction, and they've got very robust programs in place. And for the Samsungs of the world, it's a different challenge because you are fast expanding. You're not bringing in talent from outside, from foreign land. And then the next tier, which some of us get into, is if you are just a purely local company, you have very different set of challenges. Why would someone want to join you? What sort of career opportunities can you offer? And I believe for each one of this segment, the solution would be different. And I'll just leave it at that because I think we can get into another long discussion around each one of those. What are some of the issues and challenges? One more question.
Thank you, moderator, and time constraint, and my name is John Lee, and from Cleveland, and even though I have several questions, but I simply asking you to Tom and Chris one questions, and then another one is Richard. And number one is question is this regarding the, so you emphasize innovation, but at the same time, important notion is this serendipity. You know that. So everything is not comes out from the excellence in planning, but sometimes unexpected outcomes is a really important one. So one person from Japan is not gotten Nobel Prize in that field. So my question is that, Tom, how you value this notion of serendipity in the process of learning through the innovations, and Chris also, I want to know that, and Samsung, Richard. The chairman, ownership, a long time ago, there's a long philosophy that destroy everything except for your husband or wife. So you have so many professional HRDs from overseas, and overseas professionals, they have so many different systems of accumulation of the knowledge. So destroying your systematic accumulating knowledge is really cost. So I want to know the one thing is how they successfully destroying so that you have creation and wonderfulness and creation. Thank you.
Tom, you want to have his voice?
I'm not sure if I understood the question. Was it around innovation?
Serendipity. Unexpected outcome comes out from the process of innovation.
Oh, innovation. Okay.
Serendipity.
Serendipity and innovation. Over to you.
Surprising innovation.
Yes. Well, we have several approaches. First of all, there's the formal approach around innovation. We have the most number of patents of any company. So that's sort of the formal approach where we have research individuals. But we also treat innovation not just for our research community. We look and ask people to innovate new processes in HR, in other function areas as well. We have such things as an innovation camps where we ask particular individuals to go figure out how to solve this particular problem. The other thing is we recognize it. We recognize it by our website. We recognize it in department meetings, town hall meetings. So we also look at innovation in terms of individuals that are very creative because we need solutions. So one of the things that we most recently have done is we've moved our some of our research people out of the lab and have put them with the sales teams. And we're finding that that activity is being received very well by our clients because they're able to tap this research that they've not been able to tap before.
I think a short answer to that question is that you can't plan for serendipity, otherwise it wouldn't be serendipity. However, how we enable the innovation is that we seek to bring different parts of the business together. So a classic example is our retail business in China and our private investor products in our global markets business. We've brought those two together and they're bringing, pull together a very attractive product to our, high wealth, net worth clients. And that was, by pure accident.
Richard.
Okay. I think first comment was it wasn't destroy everything, it was change everything. Fortunately the wife and the husband were left out of that. I think briefly to answer your question, it's a good one. What I've been doing over the past 4 years is I've been standardizing across all of our subsidiaries basic HR policies, so particularly areas such as evaluation, talent identification, compensation and job sizing. So we try to develop a common platform where every subsidiary is following the same rules. As you say, the devil is always in the details. Particularly as we have a broad range of everybody from 20 years in the organization to just a few weeks in the HR field. One way we try to get around that is we have a global HR conference. Usually that takes place annually, and we invite the lead HR manager from every subsidiary. And when they come here, we also invite the business HR teams as well. And one area where I think Korean companies tend to be a little bit weak is open communication, but this is an area that we've been emphasizing and is becoming stronger all the time. Briefly, another area is system-wise, we're now in the process of creating one global HR system, so everybody will have access to the same formats, etc. for reporting.
Let's have one last question, and maybe someone from the back of the room. Gentleman in the middle, over there.
Hi, my name is Jay Choi from Lily.
Please.
Hi, my name is Jay Choi from Lily, Korea. And first of all, I'd like to thank you all for your great presentation. My question is, some companies, once they identify top talent, they keep the list of top talents, make it open for everybody. And some companies don't. So how about your current practice, and what would be pros and cons? Thank you.
who would like to take that first? How open is the talent program? Do you tell them? Do you not tell them? What do you tell them?
In ABN AMRO, the High Potentials program is quite clearly an open program because people are nominated and identified as being on the program. I think, in other organizations I've worked in, one particular organization, the disadvantage of not communicating to an individual whether they're talent or seen as high potential or not is that it can have a negative effect. So, for example, within an equities division that I was working in the previous organization, they decided not to communicate to their top talent that they were seen as high potential. However, they wanted each and every one of them to attend a program. So we had to get them onto a program, and they initially saw that as a remedial activity. Why have I been separated out to go on this particular program? So it's a very, it's a difficult one. What it really means is that actually managers have to manage, leadership has to lead, and identifying talent, identifying a small percentage of talent means that you're also deselecting. So that is a leadership challenge that organizations face, and I would promote being as transparent and open as possible.
Yeah, the only comment I would make is that you have to be careful in terms of the balance of this. So for example, if you have a budget, you can't put 100% of your budget and your resources just on the top talent. And so in IBM, what we focus on is being a learning organization such that there's also investments in folks who are not top talent, but also you need those individuals, and you need to also focus on growing and developing them as well. So I think the balance is how do you also, yes, identify top talent and tell them, but also that you also focus on the non-top talent and what are your offerings for that population as well.
Well, I would probably just close off on this topic by saying we can debate here for another hour about the whole communication process, and it's not just whether you communicate or not, it's what you communicate. Are you communicating expectation? Are you promising something that you may not be able to fulfill? And it's a huge, and I guess I would say one thing, that if you roll out a talent program and you haven't thought through the communication, you're probably slated for disaster, because that's a big issue. And on that note, I would probably say just one thing. I think in the last 1.5 hours we've heard great integrated approaches to talent management, but probably because of time and the topic itself, we probably didn't get too much into the role of the supervisor and the manager to make this happen. Because if you look at the strategies, the approaches, they are all great, they're fantastic, but why is it that some are more successful than others in retaining? At the end of it, the other part of the equation is the role of the immediate manager and the supervisor, and that's a whole lot of discussion around what this individual's role is, whose responsibility is it. When a talent leaves the organization, who is to be blamed? And that's a whole area of accountability and responsibility, which unfortunately we don't have time to get into, maybe for next year. On that note, I'd like you to join me to thank this illustrious panel for the comments. They're around at tea time, I'm sure. Please catch them. We want to find out a little bit more about what they're doing.